Okay, everybody, sorry. This is an exercise on codecs. So after you've seen the PowerPoint presentation or after you've studied what codecs are, this is a little exercise to help us more deeply understand how to troubleshoot our files and using codecs for exporting. So what we're going to do to start out is go to the internal network and you're going to download the faculty tutorials. Open up Elmorin and a folder called compression tests, and in there you'll find a folder called HD. And that just has some HD files versus some SD files. And I'm going to ask you to copy all of these files. They're the same files using different compression schemes, and load them onto your hard drive. So you'll have a folder with a bunch of files called Elephant 7 through 18. I don't have all of them on here yet, but I will. And then what we'll do is start reading these files. So one thing I can do is I can just see if I have my files grouped by list. I can actually see the file size. And I can see that this is really large compared to file size like this, which is only 43 megabytes versus 1.74 gigabytes. Now these are the exact same files. It's the same video, the same duration, but this gives you an idea of the range of the size we can get out of it. Okay, so what I want to do first is I'm going to just hold down the Command key and tap I on my Mac keyboard, and I have this information here. I have the file name, I have the last time I opened it, and I have something under General Information. You can just click on this tab if you can't see it. And I know it's a QuickTime movie. They're all QuickTime movies. It gives me the file size in bytes as well as gigabytes, and a little bit of information. Here's a little more. Here I have some interesting information here. I can actually get the dimensions, and I can get the codec here, Apple ProRes 4444, which is a native to Final Cut. So I can tell that this was probably worked on in Final Cut Pro. And I can see the duration is a minute. And that's the extent of what I can see here that's really useful. Oh, there's something else here. If I click on Open With, you can see here the default software is QuickTime Player. So if I click on that, I can actually change that. And these are all the applications on my computer that will probably open this QuickTime file. And the reason this is handy to know and to have is because it enables me to control the end user and how they will see my file. So for instance, if I double click on Elephant 7, it will open up in QuickTime Player, and that's what I want it to do. I don't want it, if I know my file looks best in VLC, I can change it to VLC and my end user will automatically get VLC. You may have noticed, some of you may have noticed that when you double click on your QuickTime file, that it automatically opens up Premiere, which is really annoying. So it's a way to control that for a variety of reasons. And then here is, I can actually change the file name here if I want. Okay, so that's what I can get out of Command I. And I don't have to open up any software to get that information. But Premiere has the ability to get a little bit more information, and that is just open up Premiere. It doesn't matter what file. You could just be blank. It could be one of your other projects. Just open up any Premiere file with any parameters, and then just go into File and this little option here, Get Properties For. And I'm going to go to an external file, and I'm going to find that elephant file again, and there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and open it. And here I get this interface. Now this gives me a lot more information. And sometimes this information is really scrolling and there's a lot of information in here. So it gives me a little bit more information. Now here it's telling me that the file size is 1.6 gigabytes. So it's slightly different than what the Apple is reading it as. And here I have my image size. So it's 19, my aspect ratio is 1920 by 1080. And it also gives me my frame rate, which is 25 frames per second. It tells me how many tracks there are. It tells me how many frames with a and what the duration is. And the average frame rate, because it might change over time. And it also here I have the compressor, Apple ProRes 4444. Down here, it also gives me a data rate, and this is a little different than in some programs. Now the data rate, because it can change, it's a speed duration, it can actually change over time. And when it's read like this, it's pretty consistently reading all of the frames. And you'll notice if you play with your interface that the way I read this data rate analysis changes depending on how my window is open. So look at this. I have this high-end data rate of 3.4 megabytes or 1.3 megabytes. And I think it'll go down to kilobytes. And so if I stretch this, let's see what I can get out of it. Almost kilobytes. So you see this high end stays the same, but now I have it's just giving me a lot more detailed information the more I stretch this out. So I can see that my data rate throughout is about 1.3 megabytes. And these are all of the numbers that you need in order to fill out your compression exercise. What you will do is go through the Command I on the desktop, which you actually don't need because absolutely everything that's under Command I is in this feature here, Get Properties For in Premiere. And you can fill out all of these files and fill out your worksheet. Then you can also look at these files and you'll be able to decide the quality difference between the photographic imagery versus the graphic hard edge of the text that's going on. Let me find a text frame. My computer's being really slow. Okay, so on some compressions, the photography will look fine, but the text will look either fuzzy or pixelated. And you'll also notice that some of the images might look fine frame by frame, but in motion they won't look so fine, or the other way around. So, and that has to do with the quality of the data rate. Let me pull up one more and see if I can find one that has a different kind of data rate interface. I'm not sure which one has the one I'm looking for. No, that one's not it. Get properties for, I think it's the small one. Let's try this one. Yes, this one. Okay, so some of the data rate samples might look like this. And so you can see that there's a red frame with a really high data rate and then all these blue frames with low data rates. That's because the compression is compressing your file size down so teeny tiny that it's using keyframing. So every once in a while there's a keyframe at beautiful high resolution over time, but then all the other frames are interpolated or averaged in between those keyframes, and they have a much lower data rate. So you can probably use the lower data rate in your file size, or you can indicate keyframe as being, let's see, what number would we put here? At about 234 kilobytes, average data rate at, you know, well, it's maybe around 50 kilobytes if I look at these numbers, something like that. Okay, so fill in those, and then at the end it will ask you a question: which compression scheme should you use? Which codec gives you the most bang for your buck?